Welcome to the Diversity Connector podcast, where we explore the rich tapestry of human experiences. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the country on which we meet today. I would also like to pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging, and together as we dive into conversations that bridge cultures, challenge stereotypes, and celebrate the unique perspectives each of us brings to the table. Each episode is a journey through stories and insights from a kaleidoscope of voices, each sharing their colorful narrative. Whether you're at home, on the go, or just anywhere in between, you're now part of a community that values understanding, inclusivity, and the beauty of diversity. So plug in your headphones, get comfortable, and let's connect through the power of our shared stories. Welcome, and thank you for joining us on the Diversity Connector podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Diversity Connector. This is Gertrude Mache here in beautiful Melbourne, Australia. And today I am graced with the presence of yet another amazing woman. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our show. Please tell everybody your full name, where you're based, how old you are, and share your story with us today.
First of all, let me say thank you for this opportunity to share my story on your platform. I'm Angela McCullough. I am 53 years old, and I am right outside of Atlanta, Georgia. So I think my story really began, or this work that I do began after I was diagnosed with breast cancer in my early 30s. But before I got to that, we all know that life is just a series of choices. And when I graduated from high school, we could not afford to send me off to university or secondary school. And so I knew that I didn't want to stay around the city. I was born and raised in Detroit, Michigan. And I actually was concerned that if I stayed around the city, hey, I might get into some trouble. And so I always had a bit of wanderlust, this desire to travel. And so I decided that I would join the United States Air Force. It was, I believed, an opportunity for me to see the world, as well as this opportunity for funding for me to go to college. So joined the military. I actually had a great experience. I was an electronics technician, and I stayed in the military for only a few years, because what I quickly found out is that it wasn't for me. It was an amazing experience, an opportunity that helped to mature me, but I realized that I wasn't going to make a career of it. The good thing about it is that I spent enough time to really get a good foundation for a career. So I jump out the military in my early 20s, and with the idea of I'm going to school. Well, before I made it to university, I get a letter in the mail from the federal government. And basically it says that, hey, we might have a job for you. We see that you were an electronics technician in the military, and we believe we have the exact type of work for you, working for the Federal Aviation Administration. And it's funny, when that letter came, it actually went home to my parents' house, and my mother called me and she was excited, like, hey, got this letter here from the federal government, from the FAA. And I said, really? Open it. She opened it and she read it to me. And I thought, wow, let me go ahead and let me apply. And as they say, the rest is history. I applied and fairly quickly was hired on and started my early journey as a technician, and lots of bumps and bruises along the way in that story. And one of the big things, I think it was really at that time that set me on this course now for this work that I want to do, amplifying Black and Brown voices, and also making change in the public sector, because even after I had served the country there were people in my new facility that didn't believe that I belonged. They thought, of course, that, and not of course, but they said that I was an affirmative action hiree. And in effect, what they were saying is that basically I was just a number. And so if I was just a number, I didn't have skills or qualifications to be there. And I was not wanted. And that was how my early public sector career began. For many women, being greeted with that type of quiet hostility maybe would have made them quit. After all, I was living in a state at this time where there was no family around me. I was a single young woman, but I decided that I was not going to let them run me away, that I was going to have the career that I wanted to have. And I thought to myself, well, they have information that I need. So I need to figure out how to learn from them so that I can grow. And then I also had a funny story is that I also thought, well, one day they'll work for me. And and so that really began this idea of owning my own career and showing up in that space um, as a woman of color, but recognizing that I was going to need to work really hard uh, to get them comfortable that I understood the work and that they could trust me as an electronics technician. So things are going off smashingly. I end up getting married. I move to another state. Life is moving along fine. I have my first son. Well, my only son. I have my child, and along the way, experiencing successes. I'm experiencing some opportunities, promotional, and first management position in a place where they had never had a woman of color, a black woman, and I was young at that time. So early on, I started moving in my career, and as I guess they would say, kind of crashing through some glass ceilings. What was evident to me, though, is that as I maneuvered through my career, most often I was the only one. There was no women. And if there were women, there certainly were not any Black women. And in many cases, there just weren't other people of color. And I was keenly aware of that. I was still moving forward on my journey, but I was aware that I was different or other and alone. And that awareness, it did make me do things to try to fit in, to try not to, stand out as as a female. So in my clothing, trying to cover up my female body, and just other things that I tried to do so that I could be seen as a colleague and seen as an equal, and not always seen as other. And that carried. I did that for a good period through my career until I would say maybe about the first 10 years. And then I started really owning who I am. And what that meant is being bit more comfortable in my skin, wearing clothing, okay to wear clothing that maybe weren't as baggy, right? I was no longer really trying to hide my shape, and I continued to have some additional successes. I was selected into another supervisory position, moved my husband and son to another state, and I get there to Virginia, and suddenly I'm diagnosed with breast cancer, and that. Was really a moment, it was a reflection point in my life. I had spent time building this career and this time being a mother, but in that inflection point, I took a year off to go through treatment. And it was pretty fascinating how quickly I'm out of the door at home going through treatment, and someone else was filling that seat. And there was that reality for me that you're here working your butt off, and very quickly you will be replaced. If you die at work, they may mourn you for 2.5 seconds, and then they have moved on. So I really started reflecting at that point in terms of my life, what was important to me. Um, was I doing the right things in my career? Was I giving back in the community and all of those things? It became very, very apparent to me that I needed to make a change. And in that moment, I made a conscious decision to step down from managing. Part of that was about self care and needing to rebuild my strength, after a year long of cancer treatment. It was about connecting with my family differently, my son, because interesting, while I was home that year, I was kind of a stay-at-home mom, and that was an experience I never had. And I tried to make the most of that experience in terms of connecting with him. On mornings that I had the strength, I'd walk him to the bus stop, I'd pick him up at the bus stop, and I can remember days of just not feeling strong and sitting in the bed and playing Uno with him. So the inflection point made me realize that there were other things in life that were important to me and that I wanted to begin to share with other people. And this idea continued to come up about having been the only one. And at this point, though, I had experienced some mentors, some other women, and some men who had played a critical role in my career life. So I was reflecting on all of those things. And I went back home because I wanted to be around family because that was one of the things that changed with the disease, and took a bit of a breather in terms of career. That was the time that I fully I went back to school. I was still working, but I was going to school at nights and weekends and had committed to completing my degree and wanting my son to see me, working all day, completing my degree. But I also was working with other women. And what ended up happening is I just naturally began mentoring some of the other women. There wasn't a lot, to be sure, but here and there, as you come across different women, people that interns that come in, I found myself being open and sharing my counsel, advice, or just listening, and that continued to go on through my career. So after I was not managing for a few years, I decided, okay, I finished my undergrad. I'm a little bit bored. I'm ready to jump back into the fray. So I get back out there. I jump back into managing, and at that point, I decided to relocate down to Atlanta, Georgia. That was a whole completely new experience, and it was the first time that I was working in an environment where there was a lot of different women, and there was a number of Black and Brown women. That was a new experience in my career, but even there, I was mentoring and coaching women. I went back, finished, actually got my master's degree, and so all this time, I'm working on myself and investing on myself. I'm being a wife. I am mothering, but I was doing more and more, making myself available to mentor and really just be a sounding board. And I began to invest quite naturally more in women. And I had the opportunity to attend this executive development program. And one of the options that we had as we finished this with this program was the opportunity to get an executive coach. And that was really my first experience with having a coach. And I worked with this coach as I was finishing my graduate degree. And I thought, oh, I'm meant to do this. This will not just allow me to mentor, but really help me do this really meaningful work with women. And so I finished graduate school, and then of course my son goes off to college, and I'm like, well, I'm an empty nester now. What am I going to do? So then I decide, okay, well, I'm gonna go get my coaching certification. All of this work revolved though around how I could be of service to others. And which brings me to where we are today. And the reason why I have written the book, Beyond Gender and Ethnic Stereotypes: How Black and Other Women of Color Are Redefining Public Leadership. It is this idea that all throughout my journey, which my career at this point is over 30 years, even today, still having to be in positions of being the first. I'm happy now that I'm generally not the only, but being a first, as you said earlier, in aviation, it is definitely a white male industry. And it's so critical for representation, for me to be able to be in these spaces, be part of this industry, and be the kind of woman that other women say, hey, if she can do it, I can do it. And so I make myself available for coaching, for mentoring. I do a lot of that at work in spaces. I lend a listening ear. I don't have all of the answers. I don't even begin to have all the answers. But what I do have is I have empathy and I have compassion, and I have the experiences that I have overcome, and then what I've learned in interviewing these women that I interviewed for the book. And so I centered the book on the public sector because nobody is talking about Black and Brown women in that space. And these are the women whose work touches our lives every day. And so I have this crazy little idea that if we can encourage more women into public sector spaces, and I'm talking about running for politics in city, state, local government, I'm talking about, fire and policing and education and all of those types of things. My idea is that if we could bring in more women of color into the public sector, create an environment or destroy these barriers that are keeping them from reaching these key executive positions, they can get to these positions and they can really change policies that can impact lives. And so that is my story and where I sit today.
Wow, what a journey you've been on. My goodness. So many ups and downs. And yet here you are forging ahead and creating a new stage in your life. So I'm going to just double back to the time you started in your career, going into a male dominated environment. I know things have changed and more women are in these spaces, but still not enough. If there is a young woman right now who's thinking about going into the Navy, the Army, and aviation, what three nuggets of wisdom could you give them based on what you have learned up until this point?
Number one, do not let fear stand in your way. There will be people who don't want you. They will tell you to your face. There will be detractors. Do not let that stop you at all. The number two, be comfortable in your own skin. Know what you know, but be comfortable admitting what you don't know, and don't be afraid to really ask for help. I think that's critical. And the third piece that I would offer up, and that is a good one. Oh, you know what? Please network. That is a huge. Black and brown women don't understand the importance of networking, whether your social network, people that work in the space that you're in. It is important to connect with people that are in your industry. I tell you that networking, you will end up finding potentially mentors. You may find allies. And you may even find sponsors, people who really see something in you, and because of the work you do, are really willing to invest in your career.
That actually leads me to my next question with regards to how you manage to move up the corporate ladder and get to these high powered positions that not many women of color achieve. The importance of mentoring and allyship to help diverse people progress. What should be done in the workplace to make this possible?
That is a that is a mouthful of a question right there, because of course, you said mentor and allyship, and for the listeners, of course, the mentor is the individual who is really helping you maneuver through the environment. They're the ones that are kind of giving you the career advice, maybe helping you understand about the politics in the environment. The ally is that individual who is really working on behalf of the collective other, and I'm going to say other. In this particular case, we're talking about aviation. So other would be non-white males to really change the system. Okay, they're the ones who are really working and recognize that the system is not open, is not open for others. So so both of those people play an important role, or an important role in developing the career. Interestingly, simply because I'm just finishing up the book, what I really found is the one who really opens the door for Black and brown women to get to these positions is the person who takes on the sponsor role. And that is generally speaking, a very senior person in the organization that is willing to actively advocate for you. They're willing to spend political capital on you to get you into some of these positions. Those are not easy to come by. And I will tell you, part of that is knowing very early on when you step in the door in your career, every day is a job interview. Period. End of story. And you never know who's watching you, who's going to see you, how you show up every day, how you deliver. People are taking note. And often that person who plays the sponsor role is going to bring your name and your talents into closed door conversations that ordinarily would not be brought in. Generally speaking, that person is willing to do that, right? Because they want to see you in a leadership position because they know that that you deliver. And so I invest in you. You're delivering. I want you to deliver in our organization. It helps our organization be stronger.
Absolutely amazing. Now, what were the times when you felt like actually giving up? Was there ever a time where it got so hard you just thought, I can't do this? And what made you hang in there?
Yes, absolutely. There are several moments throughout the career, and I wish I could say that they were all, 20, 25 years ago, but they're not. There were the early days of the career when, as I said, I was really being intentional to try to fit in. It gets exhausting when you are trying to hide a part of yourself. And what I mean by that is I'm demonstrative. I talk with my hands. I'm energetic. I mean, I have on black today, but I wear a lot of color and a lot of things that didn't really kind of fit into that traditional, type of environment. And at one time, I actually grew out some dreadlocks. That really didn't fit. I was really, standing out like a sore thumb. I wanted to quit at one point because it was just like, well, my goodness, I just can't be me. And you know what? I was tired of being, oh, you're different. I was tired of that microaggression, that somehow that something about me is so different than every other Black woman floating around. So I wanted to quit at that point. I wanted to quit actually probably 5 years ago. And at that point, I am in a very high ranking position with a large organization, but I wanted to quit because I felt a dissonance between what was in my heart, which is this work that I'm doing now, and I didn't really feel like that it was safe for me to really come out and express what I really feel about being a Black and brown woman, and about trying to maneuver through this environment and having to fight. I was exhausted again, but for a different reason. I kept going because that representation matters. And now I'm close enough to see the light at the end of the tunnel that I can really go and pursue these other dreams and desires I have.
I love that. Now, your illness set you back a bit. It sounds to me like it was a gift in disguise because it helped you stop and really reframe where you were, what you wanted to do with your life. Let's talk a little bit about that. A lot of women find themselves with breast cancer, with cervical cancer. What pulled you through? What kept you positive during your recovery?
Mm, yeah, that was really a hard it was a hard time. Few things that kept me going. Absolute faith. My church family at the time was amazing. So definitely that faith and that spiritual grounding and that belief in deeply held belief that I was free indeed. So that part kept me grounded. I will tell you, the experience actually reminded me of the humanity in people. There was such an outpouring of love. I tell you, I remember one day I went to the mailbox and I had a package. Actually, it wasn't a mailbox. It was to the door, like a ding dong door, big package at the door. And it was a large pink box. And the box was filled with cards and books and pens and candies. And there was all of these beautiful notes in there. And people were so hopeful and thoughtful, encouraging, and there was, spiritual messages in there. As a matter of fact, one of the favorite little pocket books was God's, I think it's God's biblical principles for healing, and it had all these healing scriptures in it. And that moment, I was like, you know what? If you believe what you put on, if you believe what you see on the news, there's nothing but hate and pain and discontent in the world. And that reminded me that really people basically are good and they're decent and they'll reach out. And so that was really good. So that kept me really grounded. My family was incredibly supportive and helpful. Food poured in. It was just a time in my life where I was really surrounded by the what I would say would be the physical presence of love. And then I was drawn closer to God in that moment, in that time. And so all of that kept me going. But what's interesting is when I got on the other side of it, I was a really different person because that point in my life, I reflected and kind of said, oh my gosh, I'm spending a whole bunch of energy and emotion about things that really are inconsequential. When you start thinking about matters of life and death, and when your 8-year-old son is looking you in the face and asks you, Mommy, are you going to die? And your response is, I don't believe that I am going to die. I believe that God put the best doctors in that I have the best doctor. So no, I don't believe that I'm going to die. I believe that I am healed and set free and delivered. But man, oh man, I was so disconnected from people's mess and what people felt, and people expected me to have a reaction that I just didn't have. So it was kind of hard for some of my close relationships because I just wasn't that same person anymore.
Yeah, being in the same position and recovering from heart failure, I can relate. But the silver lining that I saw is it was like a slap in the face that we think we have time. We think we have time to live. And it's what you do from the day you were born until the day you die that matters. So you have to live each day like it's the last one. So thank you for sharing that. So now let me take you into the future. You are
Hmm.
now creating your own tribe.
Yes.
You have this passion to galvanize women of color and show them the opportunities that are there in changing their own lives by the career choices they make.
Mhm.
You're 90 years old and you're sitting in your rocking chair, surrounded by your children, your grandchildren, your dogs, your cats. If I could teleport you to the 90-year-old you right now, based on how you're living your life, what would you say to this wise woman when you meet her?
Mm. I would tell her that I am so thankful that she stopped being afraid of people judging what she felt, that she stopped being afraid of speaking her truth, stopped being afraid of taking a platform and taking a stand against what is wrong. And I'm going to tell her what an amazing tribe. Look whose lives have been impacted. Look whose communities are now healthy. Look at the work that has been done where there were food deserts and now there's quality food. Look at the women who have been able to run for public office and to be not just run for public office, but to be elected and then to be treated with respect and with dignity. Look at the love seeds that you planted and look around at what has grown. And though, because hey, if she's 90, she won't be around for much longer. But there's legacy. And the legacy is not about Angela McCullough. It's not about books that I create. The legacy is about what we're creating in this world. And it's about how this tribe was able to just go out into the world and touch lives and touch communities and bring forth blessings and birth of humanity. And I hope that she's sitting in the rocking chair with a head full of silver hair, and she's able to smile and believe that she fulfilled the desires that were in her.
I love that. You know, I like to ask women this question because sometimes we don't realize that the wise woman is already here. She's already in us. That little seed that you have inside you is something you need to trust and not even doubt. I play a lot with the energy of who I'm becoming. I tap into the essence of the future. I ask her questions. So I go into my meditation and my prayers. And sometimes it's as simple as saying, what is the next step? Then you wake up in the morning with these little knowings, or you tell somebody what you're working on and they give you a clue or the next step or something you can do. So thank you, Angela, so much for coming online today and sharing your amazing story. I'm so happy you're now part of our tribe. You're part of our community. And I can't wait to meet you in person when I come to the United States. I'm coming in November this year. And early next year, we're going to have a major event around the Diversity Connector as well. So thank you so much for accepting my invitation when I reached out to you on LinkedIn. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you to everybody who tuned in today. The Diversity Connector is connecting some phenomenal women from all over the world. Tune in again tomorrow when I interview yet another amazing woman. In the meantime, have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world. And bye for now. And that's a wrap, everybody, on today's episode of the Diversity Connector podcast. Thank you for tuning in and being part of our vibrant and global conversation. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and it's been an honor to share this space with you, where voices from all walks of life come together to weave a tapestry of diverse perspectives. Remember, every story you've heard today is a thread in the larger fabric of our shared humanity. So, as you step back into your world, carry these stories with you and let them inspire you to embrace and celebrate the rich diversity around us. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast to help us share these inspiring stories with more listeners. Do follow us on social media by looking for the Diversity Connector podcast for more updates. Until then, keep connecting, keep listening, and keep celebrating the beauty of diversity. This is the Diversity Connector podcast signing off. Stay curious, stay open,